Welcome, Dolphins fans, haters, and everyone in between to your favorite show discussing the greatest franchise in sports, the Miami Dolphins. This is the PhinsPod. My name is Moose, your host, and today we'll be talking about the playmakers, the most undervalued and overlooked position group, the running backs. And no, we will not be doing a season review since we just did that, and if you missed that episode, be sure to go back and check that out from last week. It should be on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. But instead, we're going to project what the Dolphins could do to address the running back position going forward. As always, be sure to take a moment and hit that subscribe button and follow us if you're listening on Spotify, and make sure you're connecting with us on all platforms just to make sure you never miss a thing. Without further ado, let's dive in.
And now a handoff and a nice cutback by Gaskin. And Myles Gaskin has a first down, plenty more. Gaskin on third down, right up the gut.
Malcolm Perry, the rookie from Navy, is in. They'll go straight ahead. First down. Salvon Ahmed, extra offensive lineman. On the handoff, running into a wall. Second effort. He's in. Touchdown. It's Ahmed.
Don't get it twisted. I love both Myles Gaskin and Salvon Ahmed, and I think both are examples of some of Chris Grier's successes since he fully took on the role of general manager and roster builder back in 2019. I understand he's had the title since 2016, but those years with Mike Tannenbaum, and Adam Gase as well, I think they had a lot of control on the roster as well. So based on 2019, when he actually got full say, and yes, his vision was shared with Brian Flores, but Flores wasn't making those picks. So based on those last 2 years of drafting, I think Gaskin in the 7th round and finding Ahmed undrafted out of Washington as well, those are some great moves. And why? Well, listen, Myles Gaskin was an underhyped, underappreciated back out of Washington who very easily could have found himself going undrafted if the Dolphins didn't take a chance on him and add him to their roster at 234th overall. He was small but shifty, and Gaskin has a low center of gravity with an incredibly strong base, which gives him an amazing contact balance. He's able to bounce off of potential tacklers if they don't wrap up properly, which we saw multiple times. We saw him bounce runs to the outside on multiple occasions. And, this slippery nature helps him sneak a few extra yards almost every time he touches the ball, which is a very valuable asset. It's clear that he worked on his body too since he entered the league, and he got a chance to show it this year. When he entered, he was a bit smaller, like we said. He was always shifty, and he never seemed to lose that, but he did get a bit thicker, and we saw that. He showed he could carry a pretty good load for an offense, but in the long run, he is limited. He struggles at times in pass protection, and his lack of size gets him bottled up at times. Now listen, this does happen to all backs, but if the Dolphins can find a runner who makes their own plays, creates their own running lanes, and wears down a defense, over the course of a game, then they're going to be far better served in the long run. You want a bruiser, someone who is not only dynamic in the passing game and can escape it and bounce it to the outside, but can also lower their shoulder and hurt a linebacker up the middle. A guy like Myles Gaskin, a guy like Salvon Ahmed, I don't think they're capable of doing this. And this is where the hype for the next guy has to chill a little bit as well. And I'm talking about Salvon Ahmed. I'm a huge fan of his story. I love that he's an undrafted kid. He's made his way onto an NFL field and contributed greatly to a really competitive team. And he has a similar skill set to Gaskin. Like we said, both out of Washington, he was his backup. But Ahmed, it felt, was slightly quicker in small spaces, a little bit more dynamic, making guys miss in the open field. And we saw him flourish. He had an amazing performance against the Patriots this season. It's just that his limitation, again, result in us wanting more. His lack of size, his lack of overall explosiveness leaves something to be desired. So where is it that the Dolphins could potentially add upgrades to the running back position? There's 2 ways to add this featured back, and it's free agency or the NFL draft. In terms of free agency, the Dolphins are going to be forced to pay based on what the market dictates, unless, of course, they seek out players who are not being coveted by other franchises, guys they identify for their program as good fits that they could get on the cheap. And that's usually a bad thing if you're relying on constantly finding diamonds in the rough, but sometimes you can get really good luck and find really good value, And it helps you get that Lombardi trophy when you find value in those cheap running backs and cheap skill position players rather than investing tens of millions of dollars. A guy like Aaron Jones comes to mind. A guy like Allen Robinson, if he was not tagged by the Bears, if the Dolphins had to pay that guy 18, 19 million a year, that's going to hamstring you. So there is nothing wrong with trying to take shots and find, diamonds in the rough. Aaron Jones, like we just talked about, he's everyone's favorite free agent target. And he makes a lot of sense in terms of age, play style, and his overall versatility. But he's going to be too pricey. I'm sorry, Dolphins fans. I do not see the Dolphins reaching out and making an agreement with Aaron Jones when you consider the other running backs on the market and how much he's going to demand. Chris Carson, a physical runner, previously in Seattle. He is injury prone, which is why the Dolphins could get him on the cheap. When he is healthy, he's explosive, and he might have lost some of that due to the injuries. It's tough for running backs in the NFL, when they do get hurt to kind of come back and find a groove. Teams have to sort of feed them and get them back in that rhythm, and oftentimes running backs are never given that opportunity. So it would be interesting to see Chris Carson if he's able to come, close to the veteran minimum. I would happily take a guy like him. There's also Wayne Gallman of the New York Giants. He really showed himself towards the end of last year as being a capable running back. So depending on the contract price as well, someone like him would not be surprising. Then, of course, you have guys like Marlon Mack, Jamal Williams, also of Green Bay. Far less dynamic than Aaron Jones, but again, an upgrade based on a lot of what the Dolphins have on the roster right now. Gus Edwards would have been a great option, but I believe he was tendered by the Baltimore Ravens. Corey Clement, he did show flashes a few years ago with the Philadelphia Eagles, and if he can be had at the veteran minimum, I think it'd be a great option as a third running back. He can really bail you out in the passing game, and he's smart and understands, his role in an offense. Speaking of those third down backs and overall those third backs on the depth chart, I think James White could really be available and a great fit for the Dolphins. And yes, he is on the older side at 29, and I hate signing older running backs. I understand that. I've said that before, but I just believe that James White is different. What he offers as a player is so different. And yes, that could be trauma. Again, trauma shows up a lot when it comes to the Patriots on this show. Having seen James White in New England over the last few years, I would describe him as more of an extension of the quarterback, less of sort of a running back. He really sort of amplifies what a quarterback does and helps in the passing game specifically. He's not someone you're going to give the ball to 10 to 15 times a game up the middle or even off tackle. Rather, you sprinkle him in situationally. When you know you need someone on the field to make the sensible read, the right play, and potentially bail out your quarterback if he needs it, that's the type of guy that James White is. And I think Tua could benefit greatly from him being on the field. Not to mention James White's familiarity with Brian Flores, and the signing would make a ton of sense for both parties. And remember, James White did have that tragedy with his father last year, and Brian Flores in the press conference did come out and state that his thoughts and prayers, of course, as the Dolphins organization as well, and the NFL Nation were with James White. So obviously that just goes to show that there's a relationship there, and he cares for him. And I don't feel like Brian Flores would have said that just to say it. I do think he really does care. So if that relationship's there, maybe you see a guy like James White want to come and sort of finish his prime seasons with a guy he trusts like Brian Flores. Another name that's really been linked close to the Dolphins, and we saw this report pop up the other day. I think we all got a little bit nervous when we saw it. I believe it was a Bleacher Report notification, but it's the Dolphins have been linked to James Conner. He's going to be 26 entering the year. James Conner, Pittsburgh Steelers running back. He's the one who replaced Le'Veon Bell, if you remember a few seasons ago. The likelihood is, again, similar to Aaron Jones. I just don't think Miami signs him. If they do sign him, it's going to be in the $3.5 million per year range and up, and again, with the draft being right around the corner and these other running backs available, unless you can get them for less than $3.5 million a year and you feel like the value is good, I would entertain it there. But if you're paying, premier dollars for a guy like James Conner, I think that's the wrong approach. But again, we'll keep an eye on how that stuff develops. In 13 games last season, Conner ran for 721 yards with a 4.3 yards per carry average and 6 touchdowns. Again, nothing crazy impressive. Similar numbers to guys the Dolphins already have, like Myles Gaskin. So, why pay him when you have Myles Gaskin on contract? I think it's a meh move. It's not bad, but Miami should not target, James Conner specifically. Like we said, there's guys of his caliber in the draft. And if you're going to go look in the market, there's better options. So if you're going to spend, if you're going to spend $3 million, go spend, $5 million and get a really good running back rather than just trying to get a guy who has experience. You can find that experience and dynamic talent if you do spend just a little bit more. So Miami, I think, will either really go get that guy, or I think they're going to kind of keep it on the cheap. And speaking of the cheap, that's where the NFL draft comes into play. And this is by far the more favorable approach to addressing the running back position for two reasons. It's cheaper, like we just said. No matter where you draft your guy, even in the first round, they're going to be cheaper than a good running back looking to get paid on the open market. And again, those guys are going into their second contracts as well. They're veterans, so it's a lot harder to get them cheap. And also, guys in the draft have less mileage and fresher overall legs. And yes, injuries are a crapshoot, and you never really know. But the risk of injury for older running backs is substantial. Unless you're a Frank Gore or Adrian Peterson, having young and healthy backs is a safe bet for having a reliable run game for the long term. And there are some names that everyone and their mother in Dolphins Nation know. For example, Najee Harris. His familiarity with Tua Tagovailoa and the Alabama roots he has make him a fan favorite in Miami. And listen, Najee is a great back. Don't get me wrong. Powerful. Arm tackles are not going to bring him down. He's got great feet, can change direction at the drop of a hat, and use defenders' leverage against them. He pretty much is able to see where a defender's momentum is going, and based on small adjustments in his running, his running lanes, he's able to find chunk yardage where you have no idea how he found it. I think a lot of times people think the holes are huge. Yes, they are, but running backs at Alabama always have big holes. It's the way Najee Harris is able to get to that second and third level in a defense that makes him so valuable. And he's also a weapon out of the backfield. He can run routes and actually be a threat in the passing game too. However, if you're telling me that I need to take him at 18 overall, I'm telling you no thanks. Keep it moving. Don't take a running back in the first round. I'm sorry. It is not necessary. It has not proven to work in recent history and, frankly, history of the past before. It's not, something that really needs to be addressed that high up in the draft. Specifically, building an offensive line that's dominant to make any old tailback a household name is far more valuable. We saw the Dallas Cowboys do that. They got multiple guys paid. They got a guy like DeMarco Murray paid. They made the careers of guys because they just created a dominant offensive line. That's all you need in the NFL. And now listen, if Najee Harris falls to the second round, say pick 36, or even better, pick 50, which is definitely not happening, then yes, run the card in. I just doubt he lasts that long, and I would much rather that the team look later in the draft if that were to be the case, rather than spending a top 20 selection on a running back. Some other names to keep an eye on, just overall in the draft. We're going to get into more detail as April approaches, and we really get into draft season here. But Javonte Williams out of UNC, Travis Etienne from Clemson, who had a pro day, which people didn't really consider that impressive. I'm a tape guy. I think he has good tape, so if you can get him in the second round, mid-second round, I think that's good value. Trey Sermon of Ohio State, or even in the later rounds, you can find backs like Larry Roundtree from Mizzou, who I really, really like. I've said this before. Kind of gives me Ricky Williams vibes. I know it's the number, but it's just the way that he's so quick. He's faster than he looks. Very powerful, too. Very powerful, and so low center of gravity, hard to bring down. I really like Larry Roundtree, especially if you tell me that I can draft him in the 4th or 5th round, rather than pay a guy like James Conner $4 million to come to South Beach. Overall, having a dynamic back, and ideally a stable of these types of backs, will help the entire team. Not only do you aid the quarterback by providing them relief with a good running game, but you help the receivers as well by opening things up in the play-action passing game too. The defense is aided by having more rest, considering the team with a stronger rushing attack often controls the time of possession as well. We see that all the time. That's why the Titans are able to really control the pace of the game. A team like the Ravens really able to control the pace of the game. The Dolphins are looking for a running back who can help them control the pace of the game, rather than them needing to sort of rely on the short passing game as an extension of that run game. Because having an organic running game will help everything else. How often was the play-action passing game truly an effective tool for Tua Tagovailoa last year? It was rarely. Every time they tried it, the defense knew it was a fake. It was 3rd and 8 when they would try it, right? So it'd be great to have a running back who can really help make that play action passing game and the overall passing game, elevate and take that next step, because defenders have to respect the running game, and they have to play the offense honestly. So listen, hopefully the Miami Dolphins are going to be able to continue to develop their own in Myles Gaskin and Salvon Ahmed and make them better. And hell, even Patrick Laird, but you also want them to add talent to the room and elevate. So with time possession, with the ball, when the Dolphins have the ball for longer, that helps, like we've said, the overall offense and Tua's development and the defense. So, the running game cannot be overstated, which is why, although I said I don't want the Dolphins to draft a running back early in the first round, it doesn't mean I don't want them to invest in it. If they feel like Aaron Jones is someone who right now in this win now mode, when they're not paying a quarterback and they don't really have many players with high contracts, if you feel like this running back can help your offense that significantly and then help your team, listen, more power to you. I just, based on my understanding of football and what we've learned from those dominant teams and consistent winners, running backs are not valued like that. That's something you invest in the offensive line, the defensive line, and the secondary, as well as, of course, the quarterback. But receivers, running backs, these are not positions that you should spend exorbitant amounts of money, because oftentimes these contracts come to bite you in the butt, 3-4 years in. And then you end up paying dead cap and you're hamstrung. These were decisions the Dolphins tended to make earlier on. But listen, having a great running back can still elevate your team and help you out. Doesn't mean they're worthless. So this is a discussion I want to keep having. I hope we continue to have, just to see how the offense as a whole in 2021 looks and what type of running game you want to see the Dolphins have. What type of running game do you think best complements Tua? Do you think the Dolphins have those running backs on the roster, or are they definitely going to need to go out and address that position? So be sure, if you're watching on YouTube, to leave a comment on social media at PhinsPod. Let us know what type of running back you want to see. And obviously, we are, days away from free agency. So I think it's going to be very exciting to see who it is that Miami brings into aqua and orange.
You have heard the narrative that Justin Herbert's better than Tua, and that's the way it should have been viewed by everyone in the draft, and that's the way it's only going to be. And I know you're a Tua guy, so I'll give you the floor. And you were laughing already, but I am not stuttering when I am saying that is a significant narrative that is bouncing around the NFL and its media right now.
Well, I think it's true right now, but does it matter right now? Does it matter right now that Justin Herbert, Tua, and Burrow all lost a bunch of games? Because really the thing's about winning or losing, not who throws the most yards, looks the best, who wins Rookie of the Year. Like right now, absolutely. Justin Herbert was fantastic. I'd argue he's one of the best rookies we've seen in the last 20 years, play quarterback. Peyton Manning threw 20 interceptions his rookie year. How many of us thought after Peyton's rookie year, oh, he stinks, he threw 20 interceptions, he's never going to fix this? Hasselbeck and I used to watch Peyton's rookie film when we're just studying offense and be like, ooh, he's got a lot of learning to do. Like, ooh, we're not sure about this guy. This is Peyton Manning, and he's one of the greatest of all time. So let's let this thing breathe for a few years. Let's let their teams figure out who they are. Let's see what they're surrounded with.
Thank you guys so much for listening. That's going to do it for us here today. I hope you enjoyed this Friday edition of the PhinsPod. Hope you guys are really entering the weekend in a great mood. The weather's really turning across the country. Hopefully, wherever you live, you can go outside and take a walk, and the weather and the sun is shining. As always, I hope you got something out of the show. From Ricky Williams to Ronnie Brown and Reggie Bush to Jay Ajayi, there is a storied legacy of tailbacks in South Beach. So today, as we took a dive into running backs, I hope you enjoyed. And let's hope that we find our man, very, very soon. We heard Ricky Williams come out and say this week that one of his biggest regrets was not finishing his career as a Dolphin, or at least not playing more seasons as a Dolphin. He said he was only 400 yards or so short of being the all-time rusher. I personally felt that Ricky Williams was one of the greatest running backs in Dolphins history and of that generation, of that era. It's unfortunate, the circumstances and the stigmas of the time, which really kind of hindered his ability to play football and help this team. But regardless, please remember to subscribe to the show, wherever it is that you're listening, just to never miss a chance to chat about your favorite team, the Miami Dolphins. The show itself is available on all platforms: Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and YouTube. Please like if you're watching on YouTube. Please, it really helps with the algorithm and helps other Dolphins fans find us and grow the pod as a whole. To continue the conversation with us on Twitter and Instagram, use @PhinsPod, and check out the site for news and content, PhinsPod.com. I hope you have an amazing day, and until next time, stay safe, have a wonderful weekend. Love y'all.